Thank you very much for everyone that's attending today. So I've got the pleasure of discussing one of the most recent programs that we have undertaken at Bayside Council, which was a beach litter program using innovation and customisation. So basically the aim of the project was to decide, and it's a very good segue from what Rupert was discussing, was to implement a beach litter prevention program that included those pillars that we all know and love, and that is having the proper infrastructure, the proper litter collection practices, creating awareness and prevention signage, making sure that we schedule and remove the litter in a timely manner, that we have regular education and regulation, and we obviously went to customisation, innovation and sustainable solutions because the solutions that we were after weren't readily available in the marketplace. So this is a project that is partly funded by the New South Wales EPA through the waste levies. So I'll go through and identify some of the issues that we had to deal with and then some of the solutions that we came up with. So the glorious beach that we look after or are custodians of is 8 kilometres long, and it's the longest or the largest beach in the Sydney metropolitan area. One of the issues was that obviously we had no waste bins on the beach, and obviously as you can see from the slide just to the side, when you have that issue, it can enter our waterways and also ground pollution. We have a program, like most people that look after their beach, where we have a mechanical surf rake or a beach rake that looks after the beach, but because of the extensive size of our beach, it can take up to 2 weeks for this process to occur. And so in that interim, any litter that is on the ground can make its way into our waterways. Some of the areas along our beach, as you can see in the picture just to the left, is the geographical location of where the actual beach rake is in comparison to where the street frontage is much lower. And so we have practices that they would temporarily put the waste there, then a backhoe would have to come and pick it up from the top and remove it. And so we needed to deal with that situation. Large skip bins that we used also for the beach rake to dispose of their waste until it was removed. It basically caused an issue for us with commercial and household waste dumping around the area, and also vandalism, as you can see, of the actual skip bin itself. Beachgoers, obviously when they go down to the beach and it's a long walk, they leave behind some of their goods for us to collect, including broken umbrellas, chairs and so on. And so that was an issue, especially in the sand dunes between Cook Park and our beach. We can't rely on volunteers each year, and so even though we run very good campaigns and we do Clean Up Australia Day, we have programs with Amex that have come and helped and assisted clean up the beach. Tangaroa Blue have been great. It's not sustainable to rely on this kind of solution. And the lower promenade was a little bit run down, a little bit tired, and so we needed to change some of the infrastructure down there and also the capacity of some of those fixed bin infrastructure. And lastly, the long walkways from our Cook Park area down to our beachfronts are quite extensive, and so people down on the beach find it inconvenient and an excuse, as Rupert mentioned, to make their way back into Cook Park to use our extensive bin infrastructure. And so what we had to do is come up with a solution to provide convenience for our visitors and for our residents. And so we came together and we put together a working group, and we thought, how are we going to design this program to make it work? We looked around at other councils to see what they were doing. So the first thing that we did is some of the lower promenade, as you can see, the older bins that are weathered, 240 litre. We went to a much larger scale, so a 660 litre stainless steel, high-grade, marine-grade quality bin. So the same real estate, but more capacity within that real estate. So that was one solution. That was a custom design, us working with a steelmaker. And as you can see from the bins with the "Don't be a tosser" signs on them, they both have swinging doors that come out, and we roll the 660 litre bin out, and that's been working quite well. Down by every single walkway, we needed to create awareness through signage, and we needed to put some infrastructure at the end of every walkway. So on the way in to our beach and on the way out, no one had any excuse. There was a sign telling you what you needed to do and what is not accepted, and the fact that we've provided an infrastructure for you to actually dispose of your waste correctly. What we designed was in the space that most people frequent or love to swim in. We designed a space between each bin to be about 130 metres apart, or 65 metres, and that was in line with all our gateways. And so it was quite convenient for everybody. So even if 65 metres was a bit of a distance, it was no excuse, because on your way out of the beach, the bin is right there on your way through. So what we did is, through the middle there, we designed through with a steel maker a galvanised steel contraption, basically powder coated in our Bayside blue colour, and we teamed up with, obviously through the grant, the Logiacco campaign, using a bag made of woven polypropylene. We're currently in talks with 2 recyclers about potentially recycling those, as long as we can get them in a clean manner, and so that's exciting. And we also reuse them through decanting processes when there's not a lot of waste within a bag, and so they get reused quite often. The other piece of technology that we wanted to include was a sensor at the base of every bin, and so that would help us with the collection process, as well as tell us about the fullness levels and temperature levels if something was on fire. And so that was part of the solution. With the Logiacco ad, we decided to run another campaign, which was to do with cigarette butts in particular, to get the message across that no litter is too small. And so what we said is, in line with the Logiacco campaign, we thought it was quite clever to say, watch your butt, because if you do the wrong thing, there is a fine that applies. And it's for something as little as cigarettes. The reason why we chose cigarettes and cigarette butts is because in the Keep Australia Beautiful litter index for 17-18, it was the most littered item on the list. We run education and prevention programs with regulation officers through our summer months on our beach, and so they will walk the beach. And we've got smaller bags that we've created for groups that are furthest away from our bin infrastructure, and we encourage them to use the bags and then dispose of them in the bins or near the bins for us to collect. And it also creates an awareness, because then we show them where our bins are located throughout our beach and our Cook Park area. We also customised and created a mobile skip bin to replace some of those temporary storage areas that you saw before that we had to overcome. And so we're now in the process of branding the actual unit itself. We're going to test one and see how it goes, and then if it requires further modification, then we'll introduce the other 3 at key locations and use that as solutions to actually get some of this waste off the beach with our beach rake. We chose this as a preferred method of collection on the beach, because it's obviously not suitable for your heavy rigid vehicle or your standard compaction unit. We thought about little buggies, but obviously that can't tow those customised trailers that we were looking at, so this was the preferred choice. We introduced a full-time person to look after this program, and part of that was then discussing the implementation. So we kicked this off basically at the tail end of this summer just gone. And so on the 11th of February, what we did is we introduced a whole series of bins at all our gateways, and this is the northern end of our beach. And so we introduced 17 of these 80-litre bins, adding an extra nearly 1,400 litres of capacity on the beachfront, as well as that lower promenade area, adding another 1,500 litres. As you can see from some of the pictures, some of the signage that we've already included throughout our beachfront area, and the different capacity upgrades. So within that first stage, we introduced an extra 17 bins, and just from those 17 beach bins, we collected 300 kilos in the first week, which to us was staggering, because that could have been making its way into our waterways. And so, like Rupert from the EPA just mentioned before about the numbers and the quantifiable numbers and the baselines, the scary thing is the numbers that we don't know about. The numbers that we can't quantify, and the numbers that are in our waterways that are harming some of our sea creatures. So the implementation of stage 2 and 3 then kicked off on the 22nd of February, and we progressed through to the middle part of our beachfront around Monterey. We introduced another 11 bins, and upgraded some of our stainless steel infrastructure where it was required. And then we moved further south towards Captain Cook Bridge, and as you can see, we introduced another 20 80-litre bins in this space at all those major gateways, as well as improving and upgrading some of our stainless steel infrastructure as well. These are some of the bins in the hard-to-reach areas. So obviously your standard compaction unit won't be able to go down tight areas like this, especially walkways where there's a lot of children and dogs and people on bicycles and so on. And so this kind of contraption worked really, really well. This is some of the bin infrastructure by the sand, by some of the gateways that lead to our beachfront, some of the signage that is next to the beach bins. And so it's quite extensive all the way through. And then by the end of stage 3, we had 48 of these bins out with 2 spare. Those 2 will be implemented soon because there's an area of the beach that is under remediation. And once that gets done, we'll have 50 in operation. The actual sensors haven't gone in yet. The reason why is because we're waiting for version 2 of the sensors. And so they've just been delivered. And so we should have implementation of those by the end of this month. The mobile skip bins, as discussed before, we have 1 at the moment that we're trialling. By the time we finish the modifications and improvements to that, we should have the other 3 ready for the start of spring, moving into our summer period, and hopefully we'll have ironed out all those little things that we created ourselves for that program. The next part is a very exciting stage, and this is the introduction of what we call a LoRaWAN, what's known as a LoRaWAN network. And so what that is it's a low power wide area network, and so things like the bin sensors emit a small frequency, and so it doesn't require things like, well, you can use a SIM card, but it can be quite costly. You could use 3G or 4G. We decided to go using a system like this, which is a lot cheaper, and we can use for other sensors down the track. And so what this will do, it's easy to install, it's encrypted, very cheap to run, it has a long life cycle. And the reason why we included this is because, and this is an example, we've chosen a couple of buildings that we may be able to place this gateway on to communicate with our bin sensors. And this is an example in green of the coverage that you will be able to get basically from one gateway alone. And it will cover the majority of our local government area. And the beauty of that is that the first stage is that we'll roll that out, and that gateway will communicate back with us, with our coal bins and our waste bins. But also down the track, we've got barbecue, we can introduce barbecue sensors, we can introduce parking sensors, toilet sensors, all kinds of different sensors that can work on this one gateway. So we can take advantage of that and kill many birds with one stone. Part of the review program will kick in at the end of next summer once we get a full run through the summer period on how busy it is and how much these bins are actually getting used. The beauty of that by then is we'll have the intelligence and the data from the sensors to be able to tell us where the bins are used most and where they're not. And the beauty is a lot of these bins can be transferable. So we screw them into pine logs, or we basically screw them into concrete, or whatever it may be. Very easy to transfer or move around. If we require more in certain areas, because now we have established the template with the steelmaker, we can make them quite easily and quite quickly, and we can introduce more where they're required. So we're quite excited about that. The financing part of this, the whole program cost about $215,000, partly funded by the New South Wales EPA, and operational ongoing budget to continue running this and maintain those bins is about $75,000 per annum. These are the major ticket items from the top. Obviously the vehicle, the LoRaWAN network or gateway, the customised trailers each, they're the price, the stainless steel bins which are custom made, all the way down to the nitty-gritty stuff like our signs. And so that's all available for anyone that's interested in something very similar or looking for a project of the same kind. The on-costs, basically in the summer period, where the person that's dedicated to this program will predominantly be doing this, but in the winter period when it slows down, we'll be able to utilise that person on different projects. And so we've accounted for that. And so within the year, we anticipate to spend about $75,000 to maintain that program. The learnings from this program is basically play around with designs. These are some of the designs that didn't make it, and we worked in with the steel manufacturers to get the right one to work for us. What worked for us may not work for you, but the good thing is that you keep trialling, keep playing with it until you get the one that works best for what you're trying to solve. You know, this, for example, fit for purpose. Some are screwed into infrastructure, some have got bases on them, so you can just play around with even the design that you have to make it work for you. Things that we obviously had to consider is because it's an 8-kilometre beachfront, we have to consider tidal changes for when you go and collect on the actual beach itself with your vehicle, and obviously the amount of beachgoers on the beach as well creates obviously a bit of an issue. So we try to time it so it's the best time possible for everybody. And so in summary, some of the benefits is, since the 11 weeks of this introduction, we have taken 2,800 kilos of litter just from these 48 bins, and this is at the tail end of the summer period into autumn. So if these numbers are correct and the way this program's running, we anticipate potentially it could be anywhere between 15 to 20 tonne a year that was unaccounted for potentially before, just by creating and implementing these beach bins along our 8-kilometre beach. So there's a lot of benefits there, from functional to operational, obviously the emotional side of things through the hard-hitting awareness programs, obviously the social benefits, obviously of having a clean beach and waterways and so on, and obviously the environmental benefit, which goes unsaid. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. If anyone would like to ask any questions, and while I'm asking questions, I'll play a video in the background of our beachfront, how clean it is since the implementation of some of these bins, and some of the collection processes on how we collect this. So thank you.